Lisa. Good evening and welcome to the 9th of May meeting of Cabinet. Councillors and officers are reminded to put their mobile phone or electronic device on silent if they have one near them, and those present in the room should face forward, speak directly into the microphones and not place any papers or electronic devices between themselves and the microphones. Please would remote participants mute microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce feedback and background noise and save bandwidth to prevent loss of connection. Members of the council joining us remotely should leave cameras on. Officers leave cameras on only for the agenda item you are speaking to. If any are present remotely, ask to put cameras on so attendance can be verified. After each item has been presented, I will invite members present in the room to ask questions first. Those members joining us remotely will then be invited to speak, and they should indicate their wishes to do so by using the raise your hand facility. Only those members of Cabinet present in the room will be making the decisions, and I will confirm the result verbally for the benefit of those watching the webcast. Please be aware that there can be a time delay of around 5 seconds whilst a remote participant appears on screen. Okay, if we can just move forward, agenda item 1, to resolve that the minutes of the last meeting be confirmed as a correct record of the proceedings and will be signed by me. Do you all agree?
So moved.
Thank you. Thank you, Malcolm. Are there any apologies for absence? Lisa?
None received, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any additional agenda items, Malcolm?
There are none, Chair.
And are there any urgent decision items?
No, there are none, Chair.
Thank you. Disclosure of interest. Members, please speak clearly if you have a personal and prejudicial, and say the agenda item it refers to. Members with a personal and prejudicial interest will be asked to temporarily leave the meeting at the start of the item. Members will be invited to rejoin the meeting when the item is finished. Thank you. If I can then please ask Chief Executive Malcolm to come forward, please, with the first report, review of the Constitution, reference from the overview and scrutiny, and I believe there are 2 members that may wish to make some additional comments on the introduction.
Thank you, Chairman. No doubt Councillor Osborne will want to comment on this because it's been through scrutiny, but several members have been involved in what I have to say are, I think it was somewhere around 10 meetings, I think it was, that we looked at it. Councillor Drayson chaired those meetings. So I think it's been a very thorough going through everything. I won't propose to take members through it all. You'll be relieved to know. But I think the gist of it is really what we've tried to do is to bring the Constitution up to date, to make some of the changes that we felt were needed in looking at good practice in other organisations, and make it more of it. It is a living document, but make it more of a living document that people is. Whether it's bedtime reading, Chair, I will leave that to others, but at least if people do choose to read it at bedtime, it is something they can read. So I'm happy to take any questions, and I'm sure Councillor Drayson or Councillor Osborne will do the same. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions within the chamber at the moment? If not, I could invite Councillor Paul Osborne, who obviously have reviewed this via the scrutiny committee. Paul?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. As Malcolm said, there was a number of meetings. There was about 10 meetings, which most were in excess of 2 hours. So there's a good 20 hours of work gone into this document. At scrutiny, we didn't have a lot to add to it or to change. There are a couple of very minor sort of questions which Lisa answered, and that was it really. We thought there's no point ripping it to shreds because the work has been done. That's the idea of a working group is to do the work for us. It's recommended to council for next week, so the final decision will be taken there. But we were very happy with the outcome of the work carried out. There was a couple of points that I sort of asked Lisa when I read through it. Was it seems as if some of what was recommended was already being done. And she said, sort of quite rightly, it's almost a tidying up exercise, if you like, in that the way we've done things in the past, which is best practice, but it's just not been written down. So the thoughts were just to tidy the document up, so it's there to be seen that we're doing the right things. And yeah, so we're very happy with it, to be honest, Chairman. So yeah, no trouble from us, and Councillor Drayson obviously made an excellent job in chairing the meetings. Thank you.
For the work that you put into it. If I can just invite Councillor Brian Drayson, who I think was chair of this group. Brian.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yes, I just, other than obviously thanking all the members of it, I just wanted to highlight the recommendation 9, which is not strictly just reviewing the Constitution. It is us recommending that the Centre for Governance and Scrutiny be commissioned to undertake a scrutiny improvement review paid for from the member training budget. Obviously, it's subject to approval of the member development task group, but it was just to highlight that one, which is sort of out of the ordinary, whereas all the rest is to do with the review itself.
Thank you, Brian. If I can invite any members of Cabinet who would make a comment, Sue Projer.
Yeah, a comment, Chair, if I may. It's an amazing piece of work, which was well overdue. And I'd just like to congratulate particularly Councillor Drayson for chairing it. It did the work behind the scenes, made it much easier, much smoother process. And Lisa, who I don't know how she did it, but she kept on top of the recommendations and the discussions that went round and round and backwards and forwards, but managed to come up with it. So, well, amazing job. Thank you for that. When we had some training with the Cabinet, one of the things that was said by our trainers was that the Constitution should be our Bible. And now at least we can understand it better, it reads better, it's more comprehensive. And I just want to say that under the recommendations 8 and 9, I think that the general awareness and training should be offered to all councillors, so that's really supported. And also 9 is also supported, which is about the review of scrutiny. So I just think that we should really congratulate ourselves on doing this job.
Yeah, thank you. Councillor Dixon. Kevin.
Thank you, Chairman. In my 16 years on the council, this is the first time I think the Constitution has been reviewed. So clearly we don't want to leave it that long again. What arrangements will be made to make sure that the Constitution is kept up to date on a regular basis?
Malcolm, would you like to respond?
Thank you, Chair. There is provision that the Constitution should be reviewed at the start of each administration. So every 4 years it would be reviewed. Excuse me. Obviously, it is a living document, and as things change within it and legislative changes are made, I believe Councillor Projek or Councillor Vinehall will correct me, but we have allowed for issues such as probity and planning to be automatically accepted into the Constitution without the need for discussion. So we've tried to do that to keep it up to date, but I think it's important that at the start of a new administration there's an opportunity to at least have a review of that.
Thank you for that, Malcolm. Yes, Catherine, Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you. There's a bit in this that I don't understand. It's page 106, 8.3. It says members should be aware that correspondence via email, etc., is subject to freedom of information legislation, which does rather imply we should all have computers full of correspondence which we have kept. Yet, when we had some GDPR training when it was first introduced a couple of years ago, we were told not to keep anything longer than 6 months because of the danger of transgressing that legislation. So are those two things in conflict? Because I'm an inveterate tidier-upper and I don't keep things.
What was the page number?
106.
106, 8.3.
8.3.
No, I don't think they are in contradiction. I mean, it is just basically being absolutely clear with members, as is the same with officers, that any correspondence, email, social media, etc., is open to FOI. But the principles of data protection still apply, and the time limits for keeping information still applies. And actually, rather, not bizarrely, I suppose it makes sense, it's almost as great a sin to keep information you shouldn't have as it is to not have the information in the first place.
Okay, any other questions from within the chamber? No. Are there any remotely councillors who would like to make any comment? Jonathan is the Cabinet spokesperson. I know was involved heavily in this process, as with others. Jonathan?
Thank you, Chair. Well, it's already been said, thanking the various people, because it was a big job, and it took an enormous amount of work. I think the committee can assure everyone, literally, we went through word by word, line by line, and sometimes discussed single points for a very long period of time. I think it's really important to recognise that this was a very good cross-party piece of work with Councillor Kirby Green, who attended more earlier on, Councillor Mooney, who attended a number of sessions, and Councillor Barnes, who contributed an enormous amount. And I think it's important to recognise that as well as those on the current administration, and also two others. Councillor Madeley turned up to many meetings, and Councillor Paul Cortell, who actually wasn't on the committee but contributed enormously to it each time. So that's a great thing. And I think it is very important that Councillor Projak mentioned point 8, recommendation 8. It is really important for all members, new and old, to really have some general awareness and training, because it is effectively the rule book. And once you understand that rule, you will understand how the council operates and how to get things done. So I'm really pleased that scrutiny felt good about that. It's one of those pieces of work that you sort of hope people don't want to start to take apart again, because it is really detailed, literally detailed. There are 2 parts yet to come, part 3 and part 8, and they're to be scheduled. But I think we felt that we had done, the great big chunk of it. Part 8 is the officer delegation, which I think Lisa recognises needs to be re-looked at again. It's a bit overdue for that. So I can't propose, of course, I'm in the hybrid attendance this evening, but I certainly commend this to the Cabinet. Thank you.
Thank you for those comments. Any other comments from councillors remotely? Sue, would you like to make another comment?
Move the recommendation.
Thank you. And someone to second that? Thank you, Terry. I think this was a massive piece of work, and it's identified with those members that are involved and the refereeing duties of democratic services in order to keep everybody together. So we can move on that. So all those in favour? And that is unanimous. Seven. Okay, so this is a member training and development strategy report from Malcolm Johnson, Chief Executive, with Cabinet lead being Councillor Projak, to consider the recommended amendments of the Member Development Task Group to the Council's training and development strategy for onward recommendation to Council. Malcolm, would you just like to introduce? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just very briefly, I think members will agree that this is actually important, that we equip members for their role, and that not only do we do that at the start of the administration, but as an administration follows through or goes through, that we continue with that and we keep that development and training role. I think the best way to deal with that, and something we have done for a number of years, is to have a clear policy in place that says what it is we mean by this and how we deal with it. So I think, Chair, and Councillor Projak may wish to add to that, but I think this, and I hope members would agree, that this is a very important part of what we do in ensuring that that members are equipped. We spend significant sums of money on staff training, and it's important we don't lose sight of the fact that members need awareness and training. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malcolm. Any Cabinet member make an observation? Yes, Christine. Councillor Baylor.
Yes, thank you. I would like to, second the report. I'm sure Councillor Prochak will want to propose it. But I have to say that I think our training is really exceptional, really good. It's very broad, and it not only sort of gives you information, and it also develops your skills. I feel I've really benefited from some of the training courses that I've been on, especially the carbon literacy training, where I learned a whole load of stuff. So really, really impressed with that. So I think we do this really, really well at Rother, and long may it continue.
Councillor Sue Prochak.
Thank you. Yes, and I'm happy to obviously move the recommendation. And thank you for those kind words, because I think we've done a really good job in terms of member development. It was started by the last administration, and I do thank them for their investment there, and we've continued with that investment. But I like to think we've strengthened it and extended it. And we've also had the challenge of COVID and lockdown and remote meetings, which we have met nobly, I think, and thank you again to Lisa and her team, particularly Julia, who run the member development. And I will be giving the full report, full council, so I just would like you to support what we're doing here and note that the changes that we've had to make and that we have made, some optional, and we've taken it further forward. And I do know that our members who take part in the training, and it is most of them, it is the majority that do take advantage of the training, they benefit from it and have given us good feedback.
Yeah, I would just echo those words, because I think that in the time that I've been a member, one leans very heavily towards democratic services and the ability for them to bring together the level of training that's necessary. And when you think of the number of new members that were elected in this last a lot of elections, that they have really gained a lot of experience and confidence as a result of the training. So acknowledgement to that. Thank you so much. We have someone, Sue, you will move this. Christine will second this. Thank you. And those in favour, if there are no other comments? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much. If we can move forward to agenda item 8, the Members' Allowance Scheme 2023 to 28, report of the Chief Exec. Purpose to consider the options for setting the Members' Allowance Scheme for 2023 to 2028. Malcolm, would you just like to please introduce?
Thank you, Chair. As you say, this report's basically asking for two things. One is agreement to convene an independent remuneration panel, and the second one is we've given two options, and it's what option members prefer. Just to say that it is a statutory duty to convene an independent remuneration panel to check or to set allowances. So, although we are asking for agreement, if we do want to change them, then that's the way we have to do it. Paragraph 5 outlines basically what that remuneration panel will consist of, 3 or more people, and it will make recommendations to Council following that. There is a cost to this. We estimate, and it's difficult to tell, but the total cost is probably in the region of £1,000 to carry this out, which when you consider that against a budget of very nearly £250,000 a year is probably not bad value, really. The two options are basically, and are outlined in paragraph 4, is that we recruit the members later this year, September, and conduct a review in October, November, which would report to full council in December and applying from May. The other one is that we do most of the same process, but we recruit new members in September next year. So after the administration is elected in May 2023, and again that process would follow through. So in short, the choice is, do you want to do it before the election or after the election? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Malcolm. Are there any comments from Cabinet members in the Chamber that would like to add an option or make a comment, please?
Yes, Chair, I would like to propose option 1, which would be to set the panel up for this in this current year. I think it's really important that we make sure that we are, attracting people to be councillors and consider being councillors from across, the social class, across society, and so therefore it's really, really important that the allowances do keep pace year on year, and that we don't have a lagged year. I can't stress enough that we need to see younger, more women on the council, and I know that we have allowances which assist people with childcare costs and all the rest of it, but it is really important that we have a broad cross-section on Rother District Council representing the area that they wish to serve. So yes, that's my rationale for going for option 1 at this stage. And I hope I've got somebody who can second that.
Thank you for that. Any other comments from any other member of Cabinet that's here as to the options?
I can understand what Councillor Bayliss is saying in principle. My view doesn't really agree with hers because my mind goes back to the debate on staff pay. And as you know, 1% in the budget for staff pay. Now, 1% at the lower levels is actually not only a freeze, I think it's probably going to be a loss, particularly with the things that our staff are facing in terms of cost of living. And we've heard these listed time and time again, whether it's energy or whatever it is, and the huge increase in food banks, etc. So option 2 actually gives us an opportunity to freeze our allowances. Our allowances aren't great anyway. I don't think they're going to be to such a level that they're going to encourage more people to stand as councillors. We do have childcare costs incorporated anyway. And I just feel that we should say we can manage when our staff are struggling so much, especially at the lower levels. So I'm not sure I can support option 1.
Thank you. Catherine, Councillor Field.
Thank you. Yes, I can support option 1 for the reasons Councillor Bayliss outlined, and also because I've always believed that things should move forward and that all fees and charges should be incrementally increased. Otherwise, you start to lag behind and get to a position where you're then imposing a huge increase to try and level things up. There's always the option, of course, for members who are uncomfortable with that, not to take their allowances at all or not to take the increase, and I believe some members are in that position. I think we don't do anything which discourages people from becoming councillors from a wider field, as Councillor Bayliss outlined. And I think that although our allowances are not huge, it could just be the bit that tips people's minds over to becoming a councillor or not. I had something else to say and I've forgotten what it was. So yes, I was happy to propose option 1 on the basis that we need to go forward, is what we do, and I think it's difficult and probably not right to ask a new council to make a decision on this line. After all, if you pursue that logic, saying we can't mandate a new council, we wouldn't do any business in the last year of a council, because we would be therefore mandating the next council to abide by our decisions. We don't work like that. This is how we do it, and I think we should continue in the normal scheme of things to do what we do in this case.
Thank you, Catherine. Councillor Dixon. Kevin?
Thank you, Chairman. I do agree with option one for a couple of reasons. In business, you don't advertise a job without putting the salary. I know it's not quite the same as that, but you do need to know, when people are standing, they do need to know what they're letting themselves in for, and they have to realise that they will not be remunerated for the time that they are giving. What you receive as a councillor does not make up for the time that it costs, that you give doing this job. No one can live on a basic allowance of £4,648 a year. It's as simple as that. This is not a living. Secondly, I point out to Councillor Prochak that if we have this review before the end of this term, she has the opportunity to contribute to that review and therefore put her views forward and saying that she believes that it shouldn't be an increase. And I think that's a valuable thing that we can do before the election. It's an unusual way of going about business if you tell the people who have just been elected that they can choose how much that they receive, and I don't think that's quite where we need to go.
Okay, thank you. Any other Cabinet member wanted to make an observation? No. Those councillors remotely, I see Councillor Maynard would like to make a comment. Carl, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and welcome back following your ill health, and I hope that you're suitably recovered. Could I just say, I think that clearly this has always been an issue that's been well discussed by Council on Rother whenever we've set up these independent remuneration panels, and I think the work that they do has always been broadly welcomed across the political spectrum. And I have to say, historically, I think there's been much agreement in terms of the pragmatic view that these panels seem to take. They are, after all, independent remuneration panels, and I don't think this issue's ever been politicised. I think the two things I would like to say, though, it's not so much, and I hope you'll indulge me, Chairman, I think that the two things I'd like to say, firstly, is that in terms of attracting new members, the hybrid meeting facility, I think, will be very much welcomed by anybody standing for council for the first time, because I think that's a real move in the right direction, both in terms of our carbon footprint, but also in terms of convenience. And I think the two are intertwined, and I think that that's really very much welcomed. The other thing that I would like to say, though, just to set a marker down, I think it would be really helpful, perhaps not in advance of the election, but perhaps after the election, for whoever's councillors, whoever are the councillors at the time, to make sure that we review the timings of the meetings, because that, for most of the members that I've spoken to over the years, that's been a bigger issue than any remuneration. It's the timing of the meetings, so that it means that members can fully contribute, especially those that have children and or go to work. That's, I think, something that needs to be thought about as well. Thank you very much indeed, Chairman.
Yeah, I appreciate your comments. Thank you for that. Any other comments externally, remotely? No. Councillor Paul Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to agree with Councillor Dixon that it is basically unfair on new councillors not knowing what their allowances are going to be when they stand for election.
They will know, because it will be what we have now.
Councillor Paul Osborne. Sorry, Paul, I didn't see your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. I would, obviously I can't vote on this, but if I would be going with option one. It would seem more sensible, as other members have said, to get it sort of looked at, you know, in the current council, if you like, and then any new council doesn't have. The first thing they've got to do is look at the sort of tawdry business of how much they pay themselves. That's just my view. You know, as Councillor Dixon has said, the allowances sort of cover your loss, if you like, to be honest. And it's a little bit of a bonus, perhaps. You know, and the way we work is different now. You know, this is useful for me tonight, not having to come over to Bexhill just for a short meeting. Probably take me longer to drive there and drive back than it would for the meeting. So So, but you know, I would agree with. As much as it pains me to agree with a Labour politician, I'll agree with Christine on this one. In that, yeah, no, I think get it sort of sorted out now, end of this year, prior to elections, and it's all tidy up for next year. And any new councillors or council can just carry on with the job as they would. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Paul. We have minuted the fact that you've agreed with the Labour representative this evening, just to make sure. Okay, so I think we're in a situation, no other comments. If we can, I think this has been moved by Councillor Bayliss and second by Councillor Catherine Field. Those in favour? Those against? Abstain. Okay. That was option one, just to confirm, it's option one. Yeah. Excellent. I think, have we concluded the meeting? It's just on 7 o'clock. It's 7:01. I'm reminded by Councillor Dixon. So thank you very much for attending this evening, and thank you for interrupting your evenings that are remotely. But I do feel that remote meetings are a way to go, and I hope that we can get some consensus of opinion centrally to enable that to happen. It's going to make a big difference to people, members going forward. Thank you very much indeed. Good night.